Joining us now to analyze today's headlines is Rahul Mahajan. He's a sociologist and author of Full Spectrum Dominance, U.S. Power in Iraq and Beyond. Hi, Rahul. President Obama this morning is announcing major federal-level changes to how police acquire military equipment. In a speech in Camden, New Jersey, Obama plans to restrict the availability of some military-grade weapons and simply ban others. The move stems from recommendations made by a task force he created in January as a result of unrest in cities like Ferguson, Missouri, over police violence. Meanwhile, a bloody shootout in Waco, Texas on Sunday between rival biker gangs that left 9 people dead has sparked questions of police double standards. The shootout occurred at an annual gathering of mostly white gang members, some sporting white supremacist tattoos. Police were aware of the potential for violence and were on heightened alert. Nearly 200 people were arrested on various charges, but so far there is no evidence that any of the perpetrators were treated to the type of police brutality that unarmed African-American men routinely receive. Police confiscated more than 100 weapons from the scene. Well, Rahul, first, are you heartened by Obama's plan to reduce some militarization of police? And second, what do you make of this horrific example of white-on-white violence in Waco?
Well, I'd say, first of all, that I think it's good, and I think that the Obama administration has been at least somewhat responsive to this burgeoning political movement. And it's been remarked many times that Obama hasn't really been proactive on issues related to race, but I think his administration has always been much more open to going with the flow if there is in fact some sort of political push than past administrations would have been. So give him credit for that. I'd also say that this is a horrible crime and a tragedy. Our sympathies should go to the friends and loved ones of the victims. And obviously that people were not connected to police brutality, to see that others are also not subjected to it. But I have to say there is a real culture of violence in parts of the white community, and we have to see somebody standing up and talking about it. There's whether it's meth addiction, addiction to guns, addiction.
Rahul, we're having some trouble hearing you, and we might bring you back on the phone with us. We're discussing the shootout in Waco, Texas over the weekend when 9 people were killed, hundreds injured. There were 170 arrests, and images have surfaced of these shootings and their aftermath and police reaction to them on the internet, and certainly very few or no examples of or images of police violence. Rahul, let's turn to our next story. Barely had a 5-day humanitarian truce in Yemen ended when Saudi warplanes began bombarding the Persian Gulf's poorest nation late yesterday. The Saudi-led war coalition and Houthi rebels in Yemen had largely respected the brief moratorium to allow aid groups to deliver supplies to millions of Yemenis at risk of starvation. But the Houthis were hopeful of an extension to the truce to allow more time for aid delivery. Complicating matters, reports have emerged of an aid ship in the Gulf of Aden, chartered by the Red Crescent Society of Iran. The ship, which is violating a U.S. and Saudi-backed blockade, is carrying journalists, activists, and medical staff alongside supplies and is being protected by an Iranian Navy convoy. Iranian aid deliveries to Yemen have been regularly stymied by Saudi Arabia and the U.S., who worry about increasing Iranian influence in the region. Iran warns it will retaliate if the aid ship is attacked. Rahul, does Iran seem to be playing a dangerous game in Yemen? And is this really a proxy war between Saudi Arabia and Iran?
I mean, the United States started playing a dangerous game in Yemen, pretending that the government had some kind of broad legitimacy and had, the right to basically allow them to make these...
and you can switch your phone off because we're getting an echo. I think we can get you well on the video stream. Continue.
Drone strikes and other attacks that were going to foment violence. The Saudis are playing a dangerous game, and yes, the Iranians are also playing a dangerous game. Now, whatever game is being played, legitimate aid convoys, it's a violation of the laws of war to attack them. So Iran shouldn't need to threaten retaliation. They should not be attacked. There are, of course, all kinds of questions about monitoring and whether aid ships or aid provision is really aid, and I think those are questions for both sides. I would not be any more sanguine about U.S. or Saudi-provided aid in that regard than Iranian.
And finally, tens of thousands of Okinawans demonstrated for a third day in a row yesterday in response to the planned move of a U.S. military base on the Japanese-controlled island of Okinawa. There are tens of thousands of U.S. troops based there. That's about half the number present in all of Japan. Plans to move a Futenma air base have been stalled for nearly 20 years, but residents want the U.S. military base to be removed altogether. U.S. troops have a history of violence in Okinawa that included the gang rape of a 12-year-old girl by troops in the mid-1990s, an incident that initially prompted the relocation. There were protests across Japan over the weekend as well, and the protests highlight tensions between the Japanese government and Okinawa. Well, Rahul, the protests seem extremely well organized. Are they getting enough attention in the U.S., given that U.S. troops are at the heart of this matter?
You know, they've been getting very little attention in the U.S. I think that will change if they continue, and especially if they grow. I mean, it is a regular beat for some of the major newspapers. I have to say that, you know, the reason the United States has this hold over Okinawa is because of an extremely bloody battle fought in World War II in which over 100,000 Okinawan civilians were killed. They were impressed, some of them were impressed into battle by the Japanese, others were killed by U.S. bombardments. I mean, the Okinawans have really suffered enough at the hands of both the U.S. and the Japanese to now have this sort of high-level collusion to thwart their very clear democratic will to have this airbase terminated rather than relocated is really tragic.
Rahul, thanks as always for joining us today. We'll talk to you next week.
See you then.
Rahul Mahajan is a sociologist and author of Full Spectrum Dominance, U.S. Power in Iraq and Beyond. This is Uprising. We'll be right back.